Also, I want to talk about black men today. Hi, Laree. Hi.
I love black men.
Hi.
I'm
How are
married
you?
to a
Me
lovely
too.
one. So this
Let
is
me
one of my
tell
favorite
you.
topics.
Hold on. Some of my best friends are black men. Friends of black men. Jamel Hill tweeted something out, and I think it's time for us to have a conversation. I've been nibbling around the edges of this conversation. We're gonna have it today. So, Jamel Hill, she said, she tweeted this yesterday. I've increasingly found that I've increasingly found that many black men just want better access to patriarchy. They don't actually want it dismantled. And when I saw that tweet trending and she was trending, I said to myself, is this helpful? That's the first thing I said. Why? And then that started a blame black men hashtag, which some of it was hilarious. I retweeted not one, but not one. And I wanted to retweet a bunch of them because everything from the Hindenburg to, it was just some hilarious, because, Twitter has that, black Twitter in particular, and black men on Twitter, you're very, very clever with the memes and everything. But as I was processing it, I said that this narrative, bolstered by the Ice Cube's 50 Cent, P. Diddy conversations, and there have been several women, I'm not, going to get into those names, saying these things about black men in particular. I'm saying to myself, why is this happening? Why are you doing this? Why now? Why? And why? Was it necessary? So apparently she was having some conversations with somebody and then went to the Twitter sphere. And I'm saying at some point, we're going to have Twitter discipline. All things are permissible. All things are not beneficial. This was not beneficial. And here's what it does, because let me just be 100% clear. Black men are important. Black women are important. All black people are important. It's silly for us to have these conflicts and they're not real. So let me just give you the real. Here's the real. The real deal is there's no war between black men and black women. There seems to be on social media a very, very small, minute, very loud faction on both sides doing this thing. Now, is it beneficial? No, it's not. As a matter of fact, it is detrimental to the things that we want to get done. So I don't know what to do about it, Laree Daniel Favors, because these are grown people who do grown people things, and people like these grown people. They like the back and forth and the clap, all of the clapbacks. They love it. It is fodder, but it is destroying us from within, and it's unnecessary because here's the truth. And so I'm going to do some truth today. Here's the truth. 2016, everybody's blaming black men for Trump, right? I'm going to give you the actual numbers. Here are the numbers. Black men with college degrees, 78% of black men with college degrees voted for Hillary Clinton. Hillary R. Clinton, 78%. Laree, I'm not good at math. Is that like the vast majority of black men with college degrees?
Overwhelming and vast majority.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Black men with no college degrees, 82% of black men without college degrees voted for Hillary Rodham Clinton. 11% voted for Trump. 16% of black men with college degrees, which I think is interesting. Because, that's a whole other conversation that we should have at some point too, but they're different conversations. It's not all, and we doing this lumping in like all black men. No, matter of fact, 78% with degrees voted for Hillary. 82% without degrees voted for Hillary. Now, in juxtaposition to black women, 91% of black women with college degrees, 6% of those same black women voted for Trump. So let's just, I don't know who y'all are, and I want to shame you. 866-801-8255, a black woman with a college degree, 6% of you voted for Donald Trump. But yes, it's your right. It's your right. We are free people. We're free to do dumb things. All right. Black women without college degrees, Laree Daniel Favors, 95%. Like just about every black woman without a. Okay, so then the notion is black women are going to save us but black men, if I'm doing an average, more than 80%, 81%. Now I just did my math in my head really quick. Collectively, no degree, with degrees, voted for Hillary. That is not 53% of white women voted for Trump. That's not that. 52, 53%, some polls. That's not the same thing. Overwhelmingly, black people, we work together. We move together, even when we argue, fuss, and fight, disagree about spades, whether you can lead them or not, whether you should put mustard in your potato salad, whether or not, like, we will fight over the most mundane, stupid things. But when it's time for power, we do it. And we've done it because, as Larry says, and I know she borrowed it from somebody, what Africans have done, Africans will do and can do. In the 1870s, in the 1880s, in the 1900s, we just continue to build and grow and do things together. The frustration is these so-called new Negroes get up and feel like they're the only people that have done it for the first time, but they're the vast minority. These are the ignorant, loud minority that we're giving time and energy to, and they're not the compass. They're not the drivers. They're not the engine. They're not the gas. They are loud and they have platforms, but they're not all of us. They're not most of us. So can we focus on the 90% of us collectively? And if we're just talking about black men, the 81% of black men, can we celebrate? Can we say, thank you, brothers, because y'all do show up when called? You are there in the community when you need to be. You love us. We are queens. You are, that's the world that I live in. So it's weird. Like when I said some of my best friends are black men, I actually mean that. I'm not doing that in the, kind of tongue in cheek, like white people will say some of my best. No, I actually, if I'm being honest, prefer the company of black men to women, because there's an honesty and a rawness that, that sometimes women get caught up in these petty things that men don't. And it's just so much easier to be around because they're going to tell you what it is, even if they're trying to get in your drawers. Even that's going to be said. I respect that. I'd be mad if you wouldn't try it. 866-801-8255 is the number. I just feel like, Larry, the narrative that gets repeated, just like the poverty numbers and the incarceration numbers, and then we repeat them because we think we know, because they're telling us, the media, that's what they're telling us, and then Twitter takes the baton and runs with it, and Facebook. When I did the numbers, I was like, hey, this is not even half. This is like a whole lot more. This is the majority. The majority of black men are getting it right all the time. Can we stop? Thoughts and prayers. Your thoughts.
So you had mentioned a quote that everything is permissible, but not everything is expedient. And I think this is one of those cases where, it may be that we should have a conversation about the different ways that black men and black women engage with the political process. But Twitter ain't that space, right? And I think that this is one of the problems, and I'd mentioned this before, right after the Ice Cube situation blew up, that I wish that we still had rooms inside buildings that we own that had been screened and checked for bugs and microphones to the outdoors, so that we could have private conversations about the things that are directly related to us as a people. But we end up having those conversations on Facebook and in Twitter. And other people who are not a part of the community, who have no real vested interest other than being amused by seeing us scurry after each other, they just get to watch and participate, and then they get to do a political story about it, or they get to, it becomes clicks for them, and they're literally feeding like vampires off of the energy that we as a community are generating, energy that should be being recycled through healthy institutions that are able to help us process the questions that we have, which may be valid questions, and are able to help us produce answers and solutions that we then have the ability to implement on our own without asking white people to fund it, supervise, or consent. And so I think that this is one of those moments where, is there room for having a conversation about the different ways that black men and black women? Absolutely. Does Ice Cube hit a completely different demographic than, say, a Hakeem Jeffries? Absolutely. Should we have people who are able to take the Obama path and people who are able to take the Ice Cube path? Absolutely, because neither one of those paths have, one, proven to get us free, and two, both of them are speaking to a segment of our community that is inherently valid and that has been marginalized and only brought out to the microphone when someone else has a benefit or can use them for their benefit. So when I think about a comment like the one that she made, so I think about the folks on my block, right? Because I try to bring things home as much as possible. And the brothers on my block, beautiful brothers, amazing, brilliant brothers, like phenomenal, like just like every single one of our blocks, beautiful, amazing, powerful, dynamic. When they got your back, they riding for you, right? Do they have access to all the information that they need to make the best choices? Maybe not. Were they properly serviced in education spaces? Probably not. Are Black women who graduated at the same time they did statistically likely to be doing better right now, having access to higher education, creating more? Probably. And statistically, we know that Black women are starting businesses faster. We are the smartest population in the country as it pertains to having the credentials, whatever that means. But can we do this without them? No. Can they do this without us? No. And should that be the goal? Should that be what we're fighting for? Absolutely not. And so I think that there has to be safe space created for us to have those types of discussions in private, behind, not even these airwaves necessarily should be the place where the in-depth conversation takes place. This is just setting out the parameters so that when you at home get to have your conversations with your people whom you know and you love, you have some guideposts to really help determine where the conversation goes. You know, there are people who, I remember when we were first doing, not this round of census, but a previous census cycle, we were trying to get people on the block employed to work at the census. And they laughed, right? They was like, girl, sis, like, I got felonies. Ain't nobody hiring me. Like, I got brilliant, but completely blocked out of from virtually every professional aspirational track because of decisions that were made decades ago. And so have had to live in the underground economy, have not had access to be able, and this is not a let's sing a sob story for Black men. We don't need to do that. Black men can stand on their own. But I just think that we have come to a point where debating each other is more valued than having a space to converse with each other in a way that's going to leave us both better off. My bottom line parameter, and I think this is something that I try to be consistent with, is what is the barometer as it pertains? How is this impact the community? That has to be the barometer through which we interact and engage with each other. And you said before, does this free us? It does not free us. It does not help the community for us to be having Twitter battles and hashtag blame Black men trending for hours on Twitter. That doesn't help us. And it certainly doesn't help the Black men that she was talking about see anything or any reason for why they should be open to hearing a different side of the story. So it's cute. And I laughed. I chuckled quite a bit at some of those memes. Like it was frankly hilarious. But at the end of the day, it makes us worse off. You know, like I'm a Black womanist. I believe in Black womanist principles, Black feminism, I guess, if you would. But my principles incorporate the fact that I'm not trying to do this without Black men. Like, I need Black men to be healthy. I need Black men to have a safe space to be well because I see them as a fundamental part of my community. I'm not like some other communities that might be able to discard part of their people for whatever their politics are. We don't do that. And so I think that it's a real shame, but we just don't have the spaces or even the language and the culturally grounded skill sets to facilitate those types of conversations in a way that is going to not piss people off and push us away from each other.
And if we're being 100% honest, because again, when I look at these numbers, I see a vast majority of Black men just on the electoral space who voted in a way that they may not have liked Hillary. I didn't like Hillary, but they voted in a way that served the community overwhelmingly. Right. That said, there are people who profit from this division, this fissure. There are people who have made a cottage industry over, referring to Black women as bedwenches and, this kind of space where you pit Black men against Black women. And for what, though? Oh, because it profits you personally. You get to sell books and videos and your YouTube is blowing up. But does it free us? And if the answer is no, and that should be your litmus test for watching. If you're following someone who is perpetuating a narrative, even if you believe the narrative, because here's the thing, there's a shred, this space, it is viable, which is why I think, Trump has such a following, because there are kernels of truth. So they play with the kernels of truth. Even Pat Robertson, if I were a person who was 100% wedded to that word, being the absolute gospel, the absolute final word of God, I could listen to what Pat Robertson said and follow that letter to the law because it is written. that these things will happen. I believe he's a prophet, and therefore, because there's a shred of truth in it. But is it truthful? There's a difference between honesty and being truthful. Is it going to free us? And we have to, just like Lovecraft, I had to check my own indoctrination with that last scene with Dee, because my indoctrination. Okay. All right. So I won't give it away, but my indoctrination tells me that's wrong what she did. But my current condition and understanding of the world and history now tells me that we need to find a new way to be humane.
Yeah.
Because true humanity requires you protecting your legacy and your progeny and your sanctity and all of that by any means necessary. And when you say by any means necessary, people clutch their pearls. But by any means necessary means that if you could go back in time and eradicate the people that did you harm, would you do it? Should you do it? Right? And if you have the opportunity to do it in that moment, what is self-defense? 866-801-8255. So these are questions that are on the table. I'm just going to say that. And I feel like you're right. And I'm tiptoeing into this because this is not the space to have the conversation. You are correct. But I wanted to drop that loaf of bread in and shred it up and have people like really ask themselves, because there's a couple of narratives going on and I see it and I'm like, this unchecked is not good, and who does it service?
Yeah.
Not us.
And I think we also have to remember that, and this I remind us of this because when you don't have something, you don't know what you're missing. Like if you've never eaten cookies before, you don't know that they exist. You don't know that and so as a people, there are certain things that we no longer have, that were forcibly taken from us, that would have been able to nip things like this in the bud, right? So when we talk about rites of passage programs or rites of passage, and if you think back to Roots, either the old version or the new version, you see that Kunta, he doesn't just get to be a man, right? In fact, if he doesn't go through his rite of passage training, which is an extensive mind, body, spirit process. It is not just how much can you bench. It's not how fast can you run. It's the definition of manhood is to be a protector. And how do you demonstrate that? You do these exercises. It's can you go? I mean, it was days and weeks. It's a process that you had to go through to ensure that your transition from boyhood to manhood was not just healthy and holistic, but was going to produce men who were going to be able to bear the standards that the community determined as it pertains to what makes a man, right? So if the community says you need A, B, and C in order to be a man, it don't matter if you are born with a penis. It doesn't matter if you are physically in that body. What matters is can you accomplish A, B, and C, because that for us is manhood. There's actually a really phenomenal set of books written by Malidoma Somé, and he talks about the fact that he was a young boy who was taken. His father was in the line of chiefs, I believe a part of the Dogara community, and he's taken early on in his childhood to the missionaries, right? The missionaries come, they've colonized this together. He's taken early on to the missionaries, and he misses out on his manhood training. So he escapes from the missionary compound. He comes back home, but the adults can't even talk to him, Karen. They can't interact with him. They can't even do him because he is still a child, 20-some years old, but he is still a child. He has to go back and be initiated with the next crop of boys before he can sit at the adult table. And I don't mean sit at the big table at Thanksgiving. I mean, can you help the community make decisions? Can you help the community to determine what is next, what is in their best interest? You can't even be a part of that conversation because your mind, body, and spirit are still that of a child. Your chronological age means nothing. This was not just true for men. This was also true for women. And so and every healthy community has something like this. In America, we call it adolescence, right? And in adolescence, you're supposed to be trained from adulthood or from childhood into adulthood. It doesn't really work so well with Americans, but whatever. That's a whole other story. But the reality is we no longer have, or very few of us have, access to the types of long-term planning programs that are going to be able to produce that type of outcome. We need that.
We do. We need it.
If we have a problem, I just want to say this in relation to what we were just talking about.
If we're not moving on. Actually, we're going to go to the calls, so I'm sure we're not going to move on. I'm sure people are going to talk.
I just wanted to say, if we have, as a collective, an issue with the type of men or women we are producing as a culture, that is on us. and we have the ability
Oh.
to shift that. So, like, there's nobody to blame here. If we think that, as we look out across the land, if we see that the type of Black women we are producing in mass is problematic, that's on us. If we see that the type of Black men we're producing that is on us. And we are the only ones who have the ability and the capacity to do something about that. So I just, how about our rites of passage not be, how many gangster rap songs our kids can reference that, talk about praising
or how many
all of the very
hoes,
behaviors.
or how many hoes you
Right.
can bag, or how many times
Exactly.
you can suck up, you're right. How about that? How about that?
I mean, and it would be one thing, again, if those messages were within the universe of 95% of the other messages that was like, okay, yeah, we know 5% of us, we just like to play. It's Foolishness Friday. That's one thing. But that's the entire sunum bunum. Like, that's like the total, in total, what we are known for, the type of messaging that we produce about ourselves. So why wouldn't our children embrace those messages and then become adults who replicate the same thing without thinking and without being critical? That's on
And
us.
for all of those that say, I can tell the difference, but your kids can't, which is why
Right.
consistency is important. Like, if it, I just put out, I said fresh water and salt water cannot come from the same spring. So if you're doing one thing in your home and expecting a different result outside of the home based on the decorum that you present, but inside your house, you skeeting in all of these other things and listening to all of this stuff in front of your children, thinking that they're not filtering, you're eating a certain way and you're talking a certain way to one another, reckless. I remember when my parents used to argue, they would go into the basement. But guess what? I had feet. So I could go so I would go downstairs, Loree. We had a basement, and my father would go in his office and close the door, thinking that I wouldn't, and he'd probably be mortified, rest his soul. I would lay on the floor and listen to them fight. And my father would talk completely. I had never heard him say some of the words to my mother in our household, in a public forum around me that he said in that. But that he had the wherewithal to know, I'm not going to do this in front of my child. But the child had feet and an ear and ears and the wherewithal to go and listen. And I got to check and challenge him a few times about that. Oh yeah, you do curse. Oh, I don't say those words. Yes, you do. I heard you say, and but the point I'm making is those things that we think our kids are not watching, they're not just watching, they're the fact that they can give you every lyric to Travis Scott, Cardi B
Right.
at 3 and 4 tells you everything you need to know about their absorption rate. And if you're not feeding them a narrative that is 90% not that, that's what we're producing. And I'm glad you said that, because I wasn't going to, because I don't have the right to. I don't have children. I don't have the right. I don't have the right to judge your parenting. I don't have the right to do that.
We can indulge in whatever we want to indulge in. Just know that it has a cost. And a lot of us aren't willing to pay the price, but we realize how much it costs at a point where it's usually too late in our children's development.